The beginning of truth. The evening sun was setting behind the tall buildings of New York when a grand conference hall filled with world leaders began to glow with golden light. Inside that room, silence spread like a wave. Cameras clicked, microphones flashed, but every eye was fixed on three men seated at the front. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, sat calmly, his eyes thoughtful and steady. Beside him was Sundar Pichai, the humble CEO of Google, with a quiet but firm expression. And across from them sat Donald Trump, strong, proud, and unwilling to bend, his presence commanding the entire space. The gathering was meant to discuss technology, economy, and the future of human connection. Yet, beneath those topics, there was something deeper at play. Pride, honesty, humility, and truth were all colliding, and no one knew what moment might break the fragile balance. What began as a formal meeting soon turned into an emotional storm that would touch every heart watching. From the very first minutes, tension filled the air. Trump leaned forward, his voice heavy with authority. He spoke of strength, of winning, of never letting anyone appear stronger than America. His words carried the weight of pride. Many nodded, but others felt uneasy. Then, turning sharply toward Sundar, Trump challenged him in front of everyone. "Tell me, Sundar," he said, his tone sharp, "why should the world look at a man from a small Indian town to lead one of the biggest companies on earth? Isn't it America's pride that builds these giants?" The hall grew quiet. No one expected such a direct attack. Sundar's eyes lowered for a moment. He remembered his childhood, the small home in Madurai, the evenings when electricity would fail, the times he shared one simple meal with his family. He remembered his father's voice telling him, "Always speak the truth, even if it shakes the ground beneath you." Those words came back to him now. He lifted his face. His voice was soft but steady. "Sir," Sundar said, "I did not build Google alone. America gave me education, opportunity, and freedom to grow. India gave me roots, values, and resilience. The truth is, greatness is never built by one nation alone. It is built by humanity working together." The room froze. The words were simple, but they cut deep. Trump leaned back, his pride flickering in his eyes. No one had dared to speak to him with such calm honesty before. His lips pressed tight, and for a moment he said nothing. Narendra Modi watched closely. His face softened, and a small smile appeared at the corner of his lips. He could see the courage in Sundar's words. It was not arrogance. It was not defiance. It was the kind of truth that came only from a man who had walked through struggle and still chosen kindness. The silence stretched for long seconds, and the weight of it pressed on everyone. Sundar's heart beat fast, but he did not look away. Trump's pride had been touched, perhaps even shaken. But Sundar's honesty did not come with sharpness. It came with respect, and that made it even more powerful. Whispers began in the corners of the room. Some people were surprised, some were impressed, and some felt their own pride melt in the face of truth. It was not just about business anymore. It was about something human. Sundar continued, his voice steady but filled with quiet emotion. "When I was a boy, my family could not afford luxuries. My father saved for months just to buy a telephone. That phone changed our world. It connected us. Today I try to do the same, but on a larger scale. I try to connect people, to give them tools, to open doors. This is not a matter of pride, but of responsibility." As he spoke, Narendra Modi's eyes grew moist. He had seen the same struggles in the villages of India. He had met children who studied under street lamps because there was no light at home. He knew what Sundar was saying was not just a story, but a reality that millions faced. Donald Trump shifted in his chair. The pride that had filled him at the start of the meeting began to loosen, like ice melting under warm sunlight. For the first time in that hall, he seemed quieter, almost thoughtful. He did not want to show weakness, but Sundar's words carried something that could not be ignored. And then it happened. A small, genuine smile touched Modi's face. He looked at Sundar with respect, and then he glanced at Trump. The message was clear without a single word. Honesty, when spoken with humility, had the power to melt even the hardest pride. But the story did not end with silence. Trump, after long minutes, leaned forward again. His eyes were sharp, but his tone had changed. "You speak of truth, Sundar," he said slowly. "But truth can be painful. Not everyone likes it. Are you ready to face what honesty brings?" Sundar took a deep breath. His hands folded gently on the table. "Yes," he said. "Because honesty is not about winning or losing. It is about being real. It is about giving people something they can trust, even if it costs you." The hall filled with an energy no one could explain. Some felt tears rising. Others felt their hearts beat faster. The moment was unforgettable. It was no longer about politics or positions. It was about a man's honesty standing tall against the waves of pride. Narendra Modi finally spoke. His voice was calm but carried strength. "Truth may shake pride," he said, "but it also heals hearts. And today, I have seen both happen in this room." His words settled like a blessing over the gathering. And as the first part of this story closed, everyone in that room knew something had changed. Trump's pride had been touched. Sundar's honesty had shined, and Modi's smile had sealed a moment that the world would remember. The storm of pride. The night after the conference, New York City glowed with its endless lights. Cars rushed through the streets, and the voices of people filled the air. But inside Trump Tower, silence lived in the heart of its owner. Donald Trump sat in his office, staring at the skyline. His pride had been touched, his confidence shaken, in a way he had not felt for years. Sundar's words echoed again and again in his mind. Greatness is never built by one nation alone. It is built by humanity working together. Those words had pierced through his shield. Trump was a man of power, used to being admired, even feared. But Sundar had not feared him. Sundar had looked into his eyes and spoken with calm truth, and that honesty had felt heavier than any weapon. Trump clenched his fist. Pride told him to ignore it, to dismiss Sundar as just another speaker. But his heart whispered something else. He remembered his own childhood, not as poor as Sundar's, but filled with moments when he had to prove himself again and again. He knew what it felt like to fight for recognition. Across the city, in a modest hotel room, Sundar sat quietly with a notebook. He had refused the luxury suites offered to him. Instead, he chose simplicity, the same way he always had. He was writing a letter to his children, telling them about the day. He wanted them to understand that truth, no matter how heavy, must always be carried with courage. He wrote slowly, "Children, today I faced a man filled with pride, but I answered him with honesty, not anger. Remember this, the world will test you. It will question where you come from, who you are, and if you deserve your place. Do not answer with pride or fear. Answer with truth. Truth is the only light that never fades." His hand paused. He thought of his father, of the day they bought their first scooter, of how every little step had been filled with sacrifice. Sundar's eyes grew wet, but he wiped them and smiled. He knew that honesty was not just words. It was a bridge between past and present, between struggle and success. Meanwhile, Narendra Modi, sitting in his hotel suite, replayed the moment in his mind. Sundar's honesty had stirred something deep within him. He had always believed that leadership was not about pride, but about service. He whispered softly to himself, "The world does not remember those who shout the loudest. It remembers those who speak the truth." The next morning brought new tension. The leaders gathered again, this time in a smaller meeting. The air was heavy. Everyone expected Trump to return stronger, sharper, unwilling to let Sundar's words stand unchallenged. As soon as the session began, Trump's voice filled the room. "Sundar," he said, his tone firm but less harsh than the day before. "You spoke of honesty yesterday. But honesty is not enough to build power. Power comes from dominance, from strength. Do you believe that your truth can stand against the force of pride?" The question cut deep. The room grew silent again. Sundar looked around and saw the eyes of many leaders watching. Some waited for him to stumble. Others hoped he would rise again. He closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke. "Pride is like a wall," Sundar said softly. "It looks strong, but it divides people. Honesty is like a bridge. It may look simple, but it connects hearts. If the world builds walls, we may feel powerful for a moment, but we will remain alone. If we build bridges, we may feel vulnerable, but we will stand together, and that togetherness is stronger than any pride." The words fell into the room like drops of rain. Slow, steady, unstoppable. Trump leaned back, his eyes narrowing. He wanted to resist, to argue, but deep inside he felt the truth. Narendra Modi's voice joined the moment. "I have seen villages torn apart by pride," he said, his voice heavy with memory. "I have seen families break, neighbors fight, and nations fall because pride was chosen over humility. But I have also seen what happens when honesty is chosen instead. It heals, it lifts, it creates unity." For a moment, everyone in the room seemed to feel something greater than themselves. It was as if the walls of politics and power had disappeared, leaving only human hearts connected by truth. But just as the room softened, an unexpected twist came. Trump stood, his face unreadable, and said, "If honesty is so powerful, prove it. Tomorrow we will hold an open discussion, not in this private hall, but in front of the people, live for the world to see. Let the people decide whose words carry real strength, pride, or honesty." Gasps filled the room. An open challenge. It was no longer just about a private clash of words. It was about facing the world. Sundar felt his chest tighten, but he did not flinch. He nodded calmly. "If the people must see, then let them see." Modi's heart raced. He knew what this meant. Tomorrow would not be a simple discussion. It would be a storm. Sundar's honesty would be tested like never before. And in that storm, pride and truth would collide for the whole world to witness. The challenge before the world. The morning sun rose over New York City with unusual brightness, as if it knew the world was about to witness something historic. The streets outside the United Nations building were crowded. Journalists, citizens, students, and travelers all gathered, eager to see the live debate that had spread across headlines overnight. The news had traveled fast. Donald Trump had challenged Sundar Pichai to a public discussion about pride and honesty. It was no longer about politics or business. It was about two human forces standing face to face, with Narendra Modi quietly present, watching with the eyes of wisdom. Inside the hall, preparations were underway. Cameras pointed at the stage. Microphones were checked. Thousands of viewers tuned in online, waiting for the clash. The tension was heavy, like a storm gathering before it breaks. Sundar sat quietly in a corner, his eyes closed. He remembered his journey from the narrow lanes of Madurai to this grand stage. He thought of his mother's soft voice, reminding him to always remain humble. He thought of his father's sacrifices, each small step leading him to this place. His heart was calm, but deep inside he knew the challenge was dangerous. One wrong word could turn honesty into weakness. One mistake could make pride appear victorious. Trump, on the other hand, walked confidently across the stage. His shoulders were square, his eyes sharp. He thrived in the spotlight, and the crowd energized him. To him, this was not just a debate. It was a battle to defend pride, a chance to show that strength comes from dominance. Narendra Modi entered last. His presence was quieter, but it carried weight. People respected him, not only as a leader, but as a man who had walked from humble beginnings to the world stage. He took his seat at the center, prepared to witness the collision of two powerful forces. The moderator stepped forward, his voice steady. Ladies and gentlemen, today we witness a discussion between two great figures. On one side, Donald Trump, a man of pride and power. On the other side, Sundar Pichai, a man of humility and honesty. This debate is not about nations, but about values. Let us begin. The hall erupted in applause. Cameras zoomed in. The world leaned closer. Trump spoke first, his voice strong and commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. The world does not respect weakness. The world respects power. When you stand tall, when you never bow, when you let pride guide you, people listen. Nations do not survive on kindness alone. They survive on strength, on pride, on the refusal to ever appear small. That is why pride is the shield of every great leader. The crowd clapped. His words carried force, and many nodded. Sundar listened quietly, his hands resting on the table. He did not interrupt. He let the storm of pride speak fully. Then it was his turn. Sundar stood, his eyes steady but gentle. I was born in a small town, he began softly, where we did not have much. When I was young, I saw my parents sacrifice their dreams so I could study. They never carried pride, but they carried love. And that love gave me strength. Pride builds walls, but honesty builds trust. Without trust, no leader, no company, no nation can survive. The hall grew still. His voice was calm, but it cut through the air with clarity. He paused, letting his words settle. When I first joined Google, Sundar continued, I was not the loudest person in the room. Many times, I stayed quiet. But people listened because they knew I was honest. Honesty may not roar, but it stays. Pride may roar loudly, but it fades. The world does not need more walls of pride. It needs bridges of truth. The audience shifted. Some leaned forward, drawn to his quiet strength. Others looked between Trump and Sundar, unsure of which force would win. Trump leaned closer to the microphone. Bridges may sound nice, Sundar, but bridges can be broken. Pride, once built, stands forever. Honesty can be twisted. Pride cannot be shaken. Sundar's eyes did not move. Pride can be shaken, he said firmly. It can be broken by failure, by time, by truth. But honesty cannot be destroyed. Even if people forget it for a moment, it returns stronger. Pride lives in the mind. Honesty lives in the heart. The words struck deep. The room buzzed with whispers. For the first time, Trump's confidence seemed to waver. Narendra Modi finally spoke, his voice calm but filled with gravity. The truth of this world is simple, he said. Leaders rise and fall, nations gain and lose power. Pride comes and goes, but honesty is remembered. History is proof of this. Those who built with pride alone faded. Those who built with honesty and humility lived on in the hearts of people. The hall erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, cheering. Sundar's words had touched something real. Trump leaned back, his jaw tight. The storm inside him grew stronger, and then came the unexpected twist. From the crowd, a young boy raised his voice. He was no leader, no politician, just a child. His voice carried innocence. Mr. Trump, Mr. Pichai, he said, my father lost his job last year. He used to walk home with pride, but now he walks home with shame. I don't care about pride. I care about honesty. I want leaders who tell us the truth even if it hurts. The hall went silent. The boy's words cut through everything. Trump's face hardened. Sundar's eyes softened. Modi's lips curved into a gentle smile. In that moment, the debate was no longer about speeches. It was about humanity. Pride and honesty had faced each other. But it was the voice of a child that revealed the true weight of both. The child's voice, the hall remained frozen after the boy's words. His voice had been small, but it carried more power than all the speeches spoken that day. Cameras turned toward him, and the world suddenly saw not just a debate between leaders, but the pain of ordinary people who carried silent struggles. Donald Trump stared at the boy, his pride pushing him to respond. But for once his lips did not move quickly. He had faced businessmen, politicians, and even world leaders, but never had he been challenged by the innocence of a child. Sundar looked at the boy with gentle eyes, his heart remembering his own childhood when he too had seen his father return, home tired but never defeated. Narendra Modi folded his hands slowly, as if acknowledging that in that one voice, truth had spoken louder than any leader could. The moderator cleared his throat nervously. "Young man," he said carefully, "this is a stage for leaders. But your words remind us of something greater. Would you like to share more?" The boy nodded shyly. He could not have been more than 12, yet his eyes carried the weight of wisdom. "I see my father every day," he said softly. "He used to tell me that pride kept him strong. But after he lost his job, pride broke him. He stopped smiling. He stopped telling us stories at night. I don't think pride helps. I think it hurts. But when he speaks honestly, when he tells us the truth about how hard life is, we feel closer to him. Honesty makes us strong, not pride." The words pierced the room. They were not polished, not dressed in clever language, but they were pure. The audience clapped softly at first, then louder, until the hall was filled with applause. Trump shifted in his seat. His face was stiff, but his eyes showed a flicker of conflict. He wanted to defend pride, to protect the shield he had carried all his life. But the boy's words had opened a wound inside him, a wound he had long buried. He remembered moments when he too had failed, when pride had made him hide his pain instead of sharing it. He had never admitted those moments, not even to himself. Sundar rose slowly, his voice tender. "Thank you, child," he said. "You have spoken more truth than many leaders ever will. Your father may feel broken now, but his honesty is already building strength in you. That is the power of truth. It grows from one heart to another." The boy looked at Sundar and gave a small smile. It was the kind of smile that carried both sadness and hope. Modi leaned forward, his voice steady but soft. "This is why leadership is not about speeches. It is about listening. Today, the voice of a child has taught us more than our own words. Let us not forget this lesson." The audience erupted in applause again, louder this time, echoing through the hall. Yet inside Trump, the storm of pride still roared. He stood up suddenly, his voice booming. "You speak of honesty like it is the answer to everything. But honesty does not build nations. Honesty does not win wars. Honesty does not protect borders. Pride does. Without pride, a nation crumbles." His words rang with force, but the hall no longer received them with the same strength as before. People listened, but their hearts had been touched by the boy, and Sundar's calm truth had softened their ears. Sundar looked at Trump, his face calm. "Mr. Trump," he said, "you are right that nations need strength, but strength without honesty becomes fear. Pride without honesty becomes emptiness. What will a nation gain if its people lose trust? What will a leader gain if his followers obey but do not believe? Honesty may not build walls, but it builds people, and people build nations." The crowd cheered loudly, their voices rising in agreement. Trump clenched his fists. He was not used to losing ground, but he could feel it slipping away. Just then, something unexpected happened. The boy's father, sitting quietly in the audience, stood up. His clothes were simple, his face tired, but his eyes shone with courage. "Mr. Trump," he said, his voice shaking but clear, "I was once a man of pride. I thought pride made me strong. But when I lost my job, pride crushed me. I could not even face my own son. But honesty brought me back. When I told him the truth of my pain, he did not turn away. He held my hand. That is when I understood. Pride makes you stand alone. Honesty makes you stand together." The hall exploded with emotion. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even crying. Sundar bowed his head slightly, humbled by the father's courage. Modi closed his eyes, whispering a silent prayer of gratitude for the moment of truth. Trump, for the first time, was left without words. The debate had started as a battle between pride and honesty, but now it had become something else entirely. It was no longer about winning or losing. It was about healing, about truth rising through the voice of ordinary people. And in that moment, as cameras captured every tear, every clap, every silence, the world saw the beginning of a shift. Pride was powerful, but honesty was unstoppable. The cracks in pride, the hall was still echoing with applause when silence slowly returned. People wiped their eyes, cameras zoomed in on the father and son, and the world felt the weight of their truth. Sundar sat quietly, his hands folded, his heart filled with gratitude for the moment. Narendra Modi looked at the two with a sense of pride. Not the pride that builds walls, but the pride that comes from seeing humanity rise. Above politics, Donald Trump remained standing, but for the first time his presence did not command the room. His eyes shifted between the boy, the father, and Sundar. The cracks in his armor of pride had begun to show, yet his nature would not let him surrender so easily. He leaned toward the microphone, his voice still firm but less sharp. "I hear your story," he said, looking at the father. "I hear your son's words, but the world is not as simple as your home. Leaders do not deal only with truth. They deal with enemies, with competition, with power. If a leader shows weakness, the world takes advantage. Pride is not always a choice. It is protection." His words carried logic, but not heart. The audience listened, but their faces showed less agreement. Sundar stood slowly, his expression calm. "Mr. Trump," he said, "I understand your fear. I understand that the world is hard. But let me ask you something. What protects a nation more, a wall of pride or the trust of its people? When leaders hide behind pride, people lose faith. When leaders show honesty, even in weakness, people stand with them. And no enemy can defeat a nation whose people stand united with their leader." The hall erupted with claps again, but Sundar did not stop. His voice grew stronger, filled with quiet passion. "I am not here to say honesty is easy. It is not. Honesty will bring criticism. It will bring pain. Sometimes it will even bring failure. But in the end, honesty gives something pride can never give. It gives peace. Peace of heart, peace of mind, peace that does not disappear when power fades." The father and son nodded slowly, their eyes fixed on Sundar. The boy's face lit with admiration, as if he was watching hope itself come alive on the stage. Narendra Modi finally spoke, his tone steady and wise. "Strength is not measured by how high we build walls. Strength is measured by how deeply we earn trust. I have seen villages stand together through storms, not because of pride, but because of honesty. Pride may protect you for a moment, but honesty protects you for life." The audience rose to their feet, clapping again. Trump looked around, and for the first time he seemed small. His pride, which had always made him stand tall, felt heavy. He sat down slowly, his head slightly bowed. But then an unexpected twist came. A journalist in the crowd stood up, holding a microphone. Mr. Pichai, she asked, her voice clear, you speak of honesty, but honesty has cost many leaders their positions. It has made them targets. Are you not afraid that your honesty will one day destroy you? The question hit like a stone. The room went quiet again. Sundar paused. His eyes softened. He thought of the long road he had walked, the moments when his honesty had brought pain, the times when truth had not been welcomed. But he also thought of the faces of people who trusted him, who believed in him because he never lied. He raised his head. Yes, Sundar said. Honesty has cost me. It may cost me again, but I would rather fall with truth than rise with lies, because if I rise with lies, I stand alone. If I fall with truth, I fall with dignity. And dignity is greater than power. The hall erupted again, louder than ever. Some clapped, some cried, some shouted his name. The boy in the audience stood and clapped with all his strength, his small hands echoing in the large hall. Donald Trump watched silently. He had no words. His pride had never allowed him to think of falling with dignity. To him, losing was weakness. But Sundar had shown that even in losing, there could be greatness, and, in that silence, something shifted inside him. He did not show it. His face remained strong, but deep in his chest, a question began to grow. Had he been wrong all along? Narendra Modi noticed. His eyes caught the faint tremor in Trump's hands, the way his shoulders lowered slightly. Modi smiled quietly, knowing the storm of pride was beginning to break. But the story was not over. For the next day, another challenge awaited them. One that would not come from leaders or children, but from the world itself. The test of the world the next morning dawned with heavy clouds over New York City. The streets, once buzzing with celebration from the debate, now carried an uneasy silence. Headlines filled newspapers and television screens. Pride challenged by honesty, the boy who silenced leaders, truth versus power. The world was watching, but it was also waiting for what would come next. Inside his hotel room, Sundar Pichai sat near the window, sipping tea. His mind was calm, but he knew something larger was coming. Honesty had won hearts yesterday, but he understood that life never allowed truth to stand untested. Somewhere, somehow, the world would push back. Donald Trump, meanwhile, walked restlessly across his suite. He had not slept well. Sundar's words kept echoing in his mind, and the boy's innocent voice replayed like a song he could not turn off. For the first time in years, he felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel: doubt. Narendra Modi was awake early, too, sitting cross-legged on the floor in quiet meditation. He believed the moment they had entered was not an accident. He whispered to himself, "Truth always faces fire before it shines brighter." That fire arrived sooner than expected. By noon, breaking news shook the conference. A major cyber attack had struck global networks, shutting down hospitals, airports, and banks in several countries. Panic spread quickly. Leaders rushed into emergency meetings, their faces filled with fear. People demanded answers. The world, already emotional from the debate, now cried for action. The organizers called an emergency gathering. Once again, the three men, Sundar, Trump, and Modi, found themselves on the same stage. But this time, it was not about words. It was about action. The moderator's voice trembled as he spoke. "Gentlemen, the world is under attack. Millions are affected. Planes cannot take off. Patients cannot access care. Banks are locked. People are afraid. We must decide now. How do we respond?" The room buzzed with whispers. Eyes turned first to Trump. He stood tall, gripping the microphone. "This is exactly why pride matters," he said forcefully. "An attack like this must be met with strength, with dominance. We must strike back, show power, and make sure no one dares do this again." The crowd clapped in fear-driven agreement. Power always sounded safe in a crisis. But Sundar rose slowly, his face calm but serious. Power may stop one attack, he said, but it will not stop the fear in people's hearts. Honesty must come first. We must tell the world the truth. What has happened, what we know, and what we do not know yet. Hiding the truth will only create more chaos. We cannot fight darkness with another wall of pride. We must fight it with light. His words fell, like a stone in water, rippling through the hall. People murmured, unsure. Could honesty really stand against such danger? Modi spoke next, his voice deep and steady. The test has come, not just for leaders, but for humanity. We cannot fight this storm divided. We must combine strength with truth. Pride alone will not save us, and honesty alone will not protect us. But together they can. The room fell silent. The challenge was clear. Pride wanted revenge. Honesty wanted transparency. The world demanded both action and trust. As discussions raged, the boy from the previous day and his father appeared again in the audience. Somehow, they had been allowed inside. Their faces were pale with worry. The boy raised his hand timidly. "Please," he said softly. "People like my father and me, we don't care about pride or politics. We just want to know the truth. Tell us what is happening. Tell us how you will help us. That is all we ask." The hall turned quiet again. The voice of innocence had returned, piercing through fear. Sundar looked at the boy, then at Trump, and something unexpected happened. Trump lowered his eyes, then lifted them slowly. His voice was quieter than usual. "The boy is right," he said. "We cannot hide. We must tell the truth. Sundar, you know more about these systems than anyone here. Take the lead. I will stand with you." Gasps filled the room. It was a moment no one had expected. Donald Trump, the man of unshakable pride, had lowered his shield and given way to honesty. Sundar nodded respectfully. "Thank you, sir. Together we will face this." Modi placed his hand on both men's shoulders. "This is the beginning of something greater. Let us show the world what happens when pride bows to honesty, and honesty embraces strength." The hall erupted in applause. But outside those walls, the crisis still raged. The test was not over. The real challenge had only begun. The dawn of truth. The world was holding its breath. Screens across every continent streamed live images from the emergency hall in New York. Millions of people waited, hearts heavy with fear, eyes searching for hope. Planes were grounded, hospitals frozen, banks locked. The cyber attack had shaken the earth, but what mattered now was how leaders would respond. On stage, Sundar Pichai stood before his laptop, his fingers moving quickly, his eyes sharp with focus. Teams of engineers connected to him remotely, waiting for direction. This was no longer a debate. It was a battlefield of codes and systems where honesty and pride would either crumble or prove their worth. Donald Trump sat beside him, quieter than anyone had seen before. His usual roar of confidence was gone, replaced by a heavy silence. But in that silence was something new: trust. For the first time, he was not leading through pride, but standing behind someone else's honesty. Narendra Modi moved between the two, his presence like a calm anchor in the storm. He spoke to other leaders on the phone, urging unity, reminding them that panic would only destroy more than the attack itself. "The world must not split in this moment," he said firmly. "Let us stand together, let us trust each other." The hours passed like minutes. Sundar's team discovered that the attack was not from a single nation, but from scattered groups across different countries, driven by chaos, not by one flag. Sundar looked at the leaders around him. "We cannot blame one nation," he said. "The truth is, This is the weakness of our systems, not the strength of our enemies. We must be honest with the world. They deserve to know that this is not about borders. It is about humanity. The hall grew tense. Some leaders protested. "If we admit weakness, people will lose faith," one said. "If we admit the truth, markets will crash," another warned. Trump, who once would have agreed, shocked everyone by standing and saying, "No, the people need the truth. Sundar is right. If we hide, we may protect our pride, but we will lose their trust. And once trust is gone, no nation, no leader can survive." Gasps filled the room. Narendra Modi smiled softly, his eyes shining with quiet pride. The right kind of pride, born not from walls, but from humility. Sundar turned to the cameras. "People of the world," he said, his voice calm but powerful. "Today our systems have been attacked. We are not hiding this from you. We are working to restore everything, and we will succeed. But you must know this. Strength does not come from silence or pride. It comes from honesty. Together, we will heal this. Together, we will rise again." His words spread across screens, reaching every home, every heart. People listened, and, instead of fear, they felt trust. Instead of anger, they felt patience. The boy and his father, sitting once again in the audience, held each other's hands tightly. The boy whispered, "See, Papa, honesty can save us." The father nodded, tears filling his eyes. With guidance from Sundar, and with the cooperation of nations that had put aside their differences, the system slowly began to return. Hospitals reopened, flights resumed, banks unlocked. Cheers broke out in cities around the world. Inside the hall, the weight lifted. Sundar leaned back, exhausted but calm. Trump placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice low but sincere. "You were right, Sundar. Honesty. It melted my pride. I see it now." Sundar smiled gently. "It was never about winning, sir. It was about truth." Modi stood between them, his voice filled with warmth. "Today we have learned that honesty is not weakness and pride is not strength. True strength is when honesty guides pride, when humility carries power. This is the lesson we must carry forward." The audience stood, clapping, cheering, some crying openly. The boy and his father joined them, their faces glowing with hope. Outside, the clouds finally broke. Sunlight poured over New York, warm and golden as if the heavens themselves blessed the moment. For the first time, the three men, Sundar, Trump, and Modi, stood together, not divided by pride or power, but united by truth. The world saw it, felt it, and knew it was witnessing history. And, in that unity, a new dawn began.